might he mean by the mirror up to nature? Somebody take a stab at that, please. One of my college students who's listening intently to what I'm saying. Kara?
I don't know what it means.
You don't know what the mirror up to nature would be? Give it a shot. Come on, dig deep.
I don't know.
Anybody? Yes, Aurora, help us.
Look at what's out. Look at what's out there in the.
Right. Okay. Mirror what is reality. Okay? What you know of reality. Act in a way like you were suggesting. Naturally. Okay? All right, pick it up from there. Go ahead, pick it up from there. Can you read?
I mean, I guess, yeah.
You guess? I guess too.
To show virtue her own feature. Scorn. Sorry, I can't read. Scorn her own image and the very age and body of the time, his form and pressure. Now, this overdone or come tardy off, though it make the unskillful laugh, cannot be make the judicious grieve, the censor of the...
Of which?
Wait.
The censure of the which one must, in your allowance, keep going.
Overweigh a whole theater of others.
Okay? Pick it up. Okay.
Oh, there be players that I have seen play and heard others praise, and that highly, not to speak it profanely, that neither having the accent of Christians nor the gait of Christians, pagan nor man, have so strutted and bellowed that I have thought some of nature's journeymen had made men and not made them well. They imitated humanity so abominably.
So again, this is all in the direction of shaping your imitation or shaping your acting to be essentially natural. Although we're not coming out with saying that. Okay? And again, this is Shakespeare dealing with actors who are used to playing outside, okay, in inwards, okay, to large groups with a lot of noise and a lot of distraction, and all of a sudden he's introducing, and Christopher Marlowe are introducing, really nuanced characters and really beautiful language into the theater. And they're expecting their actors to sort of make this transition to being able to play things which are a lot more subtle than what you would get at sort of a carnival, okay? Which is kind of where acting is when these people come along, right? I hope we have reformed that indifferently with us, sir. Again, so the player king is sort of responding that, yes, we hopefully have gotten past all that. Okay? Miss Walsh, will you pick it up, please? Can you see it from there?
The Hamlet part?
Oh, reform it all together.
Okay. And let those that play your clowns...
Louder, Miss Walsh.
Then is set down for them, for there will be of them that will be themselves laugh. Is set on some quality of barren spectators to laugh too. Though in the meantime, some necessary question of the play be then to be considered, that being vainless and shows a most villainous, and shows a most pitiful ambition in the fool that uses it. Go make you ready.
So, and let those that play your clown speak no more than is set down for them. Carl, this is directly for you. Okay? In other words, don't make up your lines just because you think they're funny. Okay? Because actually, at this particular period, Shakespeare was dealing with a number of performers who actually had, in some cases, more reputation than he did. Okay? And you will see evidence of this in Shakespeare in Love as well. When Philip Henslowe, who is a producer who did actually live and did actually produce Shakespeare's work, is talking to Shakespeare while there's a performance in the Queen's Chamber, an indoor theater, okay, at Blackfriars, talking about what audiences want to see. And we see this performer who has a dog, and Shakespeare in some of his early plays included this character with his dog in his plays. And it's arguable whether this actor, okay, actually did the lines that Shakespeare wrote for him, or whether it was just sort of stand-up material that was thrown in the middle of this. Okay? And certainly the bit with the dog would have been kind of hard to nail down. It would have been by nature fairly improvisational. Whereas as we go along in Shakespeare's canon, we see more and more the comic characters being written in verse, being more refined in some cases, and certainly being characters which you wouldn't necessarily just find running around the streets. Okay? Dogberry in Much Ado About Nothing, yes, you would find that sort of character, that sort of bumbling cop kind of character. People would be familiar with that character, but it would be a character that an actor would be playing. Okay? Whereas the Launce the Dog stuff in Two Gentlemen of Verona could very well have just been this comedic actor just doing his bit and pumping it into the middle of Two Gentlemen of Verona. Okay? So this is Shakespeare sort of speaking out against that kind of business. All right? So, to give you a little sense of what, and you're going to get this from the play, what we have in Renaissance England, Elizabethan England, are troupes of players who are working in London as a group at different theaters under different producers. Okay? And some of them will be at the Rose, and they would be Lord Chamberlain's men. Every group of actors has to have sort of a sponsor. And the reason for that is because groups of actors are also, there's a very fine line between a group of actor and, say, a group of thieves or wandering rogues. Okay? So if they had a sponsor, like the Lord Chamberlain or the Lord Admiral, then they would have a letter that they could carry with them to travel about the country performing that proved that they weren't just a band of people out robbing people. Because people were not allowed to just go wandering about the countryside without any credentials. Okay? If they did, they were often suspected of being criminals. Okay? Vagrancy, sort of showing up town to town as a group, was something that was not really allowed in Elizabethan England. You needed to have a reason to be someplace. Okay? So these groups of players would essentially be sponsored by a nobleman and then allowed to travel around inyard to inyard performing. And when I say inyard, I'm talking about an inn that literally is like a U-shaped configuration of buildings with a gate, which was a terrific place to have a play. You had sort of a built-in balcony behind you. You brought a wagon in. You could set it up right in the middle of the infield. And you got a gate, so people that come in from the villages, you can charge people to come in. And that was where people went to perform sort of during the months when the theaters weren't playing in London. Theaters were closed for all kinds of reasons. They were closed because of disease. They were closed because of weather, bad weather particularly. Okay? They were closed because of financial problems. So players went on the road when they couldn't make it in London, okay, at that particular time. London itself actually legally did not have any theaters in it. All the theaters were technically on the other side of the river in an area of London called Southwark. And that was because there actually was theater in general was sort of frowned on by the then Protestant church under Queen Elizabeth. Ultimately, when the Protestants took over completely, killed the king, and had Cromwell's Commonwealth, they burned all of the theaters to the ground and forbade acting in general until the restoration of the monarchy. Okay? So this sort of rise of Protestantism in Elizabethan England is sort of balanced along with Catholicism, which is tolerated but illegal, and we have this sort of religious sort of furor, which you'll see manifest in people sort of speaking out against acting intermittently in Shakespeare in Love, which happened quite a bit. You would have sort of a, I'm sure you people have run across this before, people speaking out, sort of proselytizing preachers, etc., outside, maybe in the Boston Common or on the street corner. Occasionally we'll get one on campus or something. Well, this happened during this period, and these people would show up sort of outside the theaters and be proselytizing as to why theater was a damnation, and if you went and saw this play, you're going to burn in hell, etc., etc. Okay? So, those people, unfortunately, ultimately ran the government for a period of time. Okay? So, there's this tension that exists in Elizabethan society. Players are not particularly well paid, although some of them do quite well. Shakespeare, who begins, we don't know, but probably as an actor, okay, in the Lord Admiral's Men, ultimately becomes a member of the Lord Chamberlain's Men, and later under King James, the King's Men, as he is at that point quite successful. He actually ends up owning a part of the theater. He becomes what we call a shareholder. And that was sort of the way acting was paid. You were either paid on a sort of a per-show basis, or you actually became part owner of the company and got a small share of the profits, which is joked about in the movie as well, that there never are any profits, and so obviously you don't have to worry about paying the actors. Okay? So we see this evolve, and this is what we understand as Elizabeth. Now this is just what's happening in England. Obviously there's a version of this going on all over Europe during this period. Okay?